Uh-oh.
Now we're live. Connection. Hi, Dr. Rob Kiltz and Maria Emmerich here to share everything keto.
Everything keto.
We're really excited to have Maria here, and we've got Maria Emmerich. What's the Keto Adapted? What's the
Keto Adapted is my Facebook.
Yep, and CMY Fertility Facebook, and we're going to share thoughts, ideas, and we're just really open to your comments. We're going to be taking a lot of questions on the CMY Fertility, but Will's going to be looking at some of the questions on Maria's side and maybe throwing out some questions
Otherwise,
there.
I'll respond to you later, everybody.
And I know everyone knows about all Maria's books, and boy, this is the one I think I started with, and we're really loving all of the amazing stuff her and her husband Craig have been putting out there and really sharing everything keto and learning about health and wellness. And Maria's been very, very inspiring for me. And we're just going to start in, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got into all this, Maria.
For sure. I mean, it's kind of crazy how popular keto is now. And Craig was like, how long have you been doing it? And I was like, I didn't know it was keto, but about 20 years ago, I cut out carbohydrates. And that's because I had PCOS, and it was making me ill, and I knew I needed to cut carbohydrates out, and caffeine increases those androgens, you know? And so I just started doing it a long time ago, and I was seen as this crazy lady, like really crazy. And everybody would try. When you try to like change your life and your diet, the food pushers come out like crazy, right? And I remember being like, I have a gluten allergy. But you know what's interesting? If someone were an alcoholic or trying to cut cigarettes, you get a lot of support, right? Mm-hmm. But if you try to cut sugar and carbohydrates out of your life and get rid of your diabetes or whatever it is, those food pushers are like, people are triggered about that.
Well, it's interesting because in medicine, I used to think that the gluten sensitivities and the celiac was sort of like just a psychological made up. That's kind of what we were taught in medicine. So it was really very interesting on how and then it's like, well, here, eat more food. Here's your food to make you feel better.
Yeah, and I mean, I started eating this way, and then my husband came along a couple years later, you know, because he saw me get like super, I mean, I'm almost 40 and I'm like super energized. I feel better than I did even in my teens. And I would never want to go back to that. And so him seeing me, he jumped on board. He used to brew his own beer. He made his own wine. And he's like, nope, I don't want to do any of that. And we have a 7 and 9-year-old now. Wonderful. And they eat this way. They joke that they're carnivores. It was so funny. I took them on a cruise ship that I was speaking on, and the waiter asked if he wanted a Caesar salad, and he goes, what do you think, I'm a vegetarian? That's so funny, huh? You know, they are meat eaters.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because it's sort of, I always sort of joke a little bit, well, instead of the vegan veggie meal, I want the carnivore meal.
Yes.
But we're afraid to say that and do
that. I know. And it's just, it's so wonderful to feel awesome again. Mm-hmm, and so yeah, my whole family eats very low carbohydrates. I don't know, we live this lifestyle. We preach it, and we've never felt better.
So you've been writing about it and teaching about it for how long? And tell me about how you got into that.
How I got into it, right out of I went to school for nutrition and exercise physiology. Mm-hmm. However, I fell in love at 17, and I got married at a very early age. I was like, I'm just going to be a mom, and life happened. It was like I was called to do something else, but I was ignoring it, and so I think that, you know, I was hit with a crash. My husband lost his job, and we lost just about everything. You know, we went to the library for date night. You know, our cars were gone. We lost our house. Like, we had nothing. And so you know what I did? Hung out at the library, and I wrote a lot. And I'm a really private person, but I feel like the more I put out there and told the truth and the pain I went through and the suffering alone, because women with PCOS, it's still something that we don't like to talk about. It's like our bodies are failing us because we're meant to give birth, you know, and I can't. And so during that time, we were trying to adopt children. And if you know about job loss, you need to have insurance, right? And so that started all over. After spending so much money on that, it was just done. And so I had no purpose. Like, I felt lost, and someone told me, you're going to write a cookbook of all those yummy recipes you eat to help raise money for your adoption. It's like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And it gave me a reason to wake up. And all of a sudden, boom. It was like on Amazon, and it went gangbusters, and I still, like, I get goosebumps thinking about it right now. It was like I was ignoring my calling, and
your calling was knocking at
yes,
the door,
but
and trying to wake.
At the time, people would say everything happens for a reason, but it's like, here we are with no money, but in reality, we couldn't eat out anymore because we didn't have the money. You know what? I put a restaurant favorites recipe book together because it was like, that's what we did. We recreated everything we loved in the home, and we got healthier by not doing that. We saved money by not eating out, and it was all written at the start.
So PCOS, you mentioned that, but the going out part of it, because that's a big problem for everyone, is that we're so used to going out, and it's as if we're used to just being amused every day.
Yeah.
And so we're treating our lives and our bodies like an amusement park rather than the temple. And so, here's
another thing too. Like, everyone says, oh, I don't have time to cook, and it costs too healthy to eat,
too much to eat healthy.
Keto at home. Yeah, it costs too much. And so what was interesting, we were at the beach one day, and I said, Craig, you jump in the car and go get Chipotle. And Chipotle's not far from our house. I said, I'm going to make Chipotle at home. Because it's just like, we get it without any tortillas or beans or rice or anything like that. And so I made it at home. And not only did it cost a fourth of the amount, I had leftovers. And it took him, by the time he got home, I already cleaned up everything and we ate.
Wow.
And so it's not about time. It's about effort. And I don't mind. I mean, instead of like killing yourself in the gym, I cut my gym membership because I don't like the fluorescent lights. I don't like the music. And I'm working out in the kitchen, like walk around the grocery store and get some food and like turn some music on in your home, and like cooking is important.
So we talk about not having time, we're running around, we go to the gym, and trying to work out when we're losing insight into just being present with our friends, our family, or sometimes just ourselves.
Right.
Yep. And so we're all stressed in this. And so tell me a little bit about the PCOS and how ketogenic food plan can really help inspire and change the metabolic processes in a woman with PCOS.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a diabetes that's affecting female fertility, where too many carbohydrates and too much caffeine increases those androgens, which are that male hormone, and we want some. We just don't want a lot, right? And that can cause things like irregular periods, dark facial hair, acne, all of that type of stuff. And it's horrifying. You feel like an alien, right? And so just like I slowly started cutting carbohydrates, and it started with, the breads and pastas and rice. And that in itself is a great step for everybody to do, right? I worked a little bit with a grocery store manager, and he's like, you see the bread on the shelf? I said, yeah. He goes, that used to have a shelf life of 3 days. He's like, do you know what it is now, 5 years later? A shelf life of 11 days.
Okay, how does that happen?
Right?
How does that happen?
Totally. All these additives, in the last 10 years, there's about over 10,000 new food things in products. And I thought I grew up on a bad diet. Like, I fear for what my kids are being shown, because I took them to the grocery store the other day, and they like string cheese. And they're like, oh, Mom, look at hot pink string cheese. I was like, hot pink string cheese? It was like fruit punch flavored My Little Pony string cheese. Like, that is scary. And they're marketing that to my kids. And so sometimes I get judgment and pushback from people saying, well, why do you make keto treats? Why don't you just have a steak or things like that? It's like, the keto treats are more for getting my kids, they love, like, they are pretty much carnivores. But if someone says in my family, I want a cupcake, you're darn well sure I'm going to try to make a cupcake, and just make it keto.
So there are ways from time to time, and we do enjoy food as a part of pleasure of life. And it was interesting because I was looking a little bit about different foods and how so many foods have cartoon characters that try to attract children into eating them. Yes. And most of those are all carbohydrates things that are cheap. Not very much so. Yeah. And it is, the other observation is that well before you and I were growing up, now the market was about 1/10 the size of a supermarket box store today. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, the amount of food that's available for us is like outrageously crazy. Yes. And do we need all that food?
No. What's interesting is my children are from Ethiopia, if your fertility clinic people don't know that. And there was a man who left Ethiopia and came to the United States, and he walked into a grocery store and he almost had a meltdown. Because, first of all, everything in the store didn't look like food to him compared to Ethiopia. And second of all, it was just overwhelming, the amount of things and foods and products. He basically had a meltdown in there.
So variety. Let's talk a little bit about variety, the spice of life.
Yes.
And whether or not variety is really good for us.
You know what? Think about going to a buffet. You fill your plate up with all these different flavors, and you're eating at this, and you get bored with that flavor. You move to this, you're bored of that flavor. Your belly might be full, but you know what? Those flavors are stimulating different neurons in your brain. Mm-hmm, so you keep overeating, and then at the end of the buffet, you're like, oh gosh, I ate way too much. But you kept stimulating. But if you eat a big old ribeye, after a while, you're like, I'm done. Right?
It fills you up much faster because that one thing you're focused on. So I've always had this idea that all this variety is spice of life is adding too many plant antigens that we're likely allergic to, and also phytochemicals at the same time. So those things counteract with the body more so.
Oh, absolutely. People think that you need your fruits and vegetables. But, my husband, the scientist, he's all into showing you these charts. You think a kale or blueberry has more nutrients than a steak? No, it doesn't. I mean, when you look at the charts, you cannot deny this. There's kale and blueberries, they have some nutrients and stuff. But the steak, the beef, and the organ meat, that has way more nutrients. So organ meat, is... If you want to be an awesome carnivore, you need to eat nose to tail. You need to, even our doggie, she gets ground up beef heart. Everyone's like, what do you feed your dog? I was like, we go to the butcher and he grinds up the beef heart for us and we have it in our freezer. We have 3 chest freezers.
Well, it's very interesting. So our animals, our cats, dogs, and other domestic animals are highly damaged due to inflammation, due to this basically... a grain, fully grain diet, which is really dangerous for us.
We were on a bike ride the other day and we saw a dead deer carcass. I know, it's kind of weird. But my little boy said, oh, it's gone. The next day it was gone. I said, well, there's a wolf center where it's kind of like a wolf science center. And I said, the DNR will pick up those dead carcasses and feed that to the wolves. And I was like, that's what they're supposed to eat. They were not eating carrots and... all of these grains put in the dog food.
So organ meats, because this is one that most people go to liver, they don't want to touch it, but isn't liver one of the most valuable sources of all minerals, vitamins, and all the other things our body needs?
And this is where the food lover in me comes out. I do not want to eat liver and onions. I just don't. My mom likes it. I don't. And so you know what I do? I tell my husband to grind it up. And the butcher will do that for you too. But you grind it up. And I do about a 1-to-4 ratio when I make my chili. My keto chili. There's no beans, no rice. It's basically just a bunch of beef, right? So I'll add that to the chili. Or hamburgers. You just add some of that into your ground hamburger. You won't even know it's
there.
Add the ground liver. Up just into your ground beef.
Okay.
And it works really good in meatloafs, meatballs. Can you tell what we eat?
Oh man,
we eat a lot of beef.
But what that sounds like a heart attack ready to happen. Isn't that what everyone talks about? You're eating all this fatty meat and all this organ meat. Mm-hmm. It's high in fat. Isn't that going to cause heart disease?
I like to tell people, so the whole idea of cholesterol, you believe that breast milk is the best thing for a mother to give her baby, right? Did you know that breast milk is primarily cholesterol? Did God have an agenda to hurt this baby?
Good point.
Or at what age are we supposed to stop having cholesterol? I mean, that breast milk is so filled with cholesterol because it's building the baby's gonads. It's building their hormones. And if you don't eat enough cholesterol, guess what? Your body's smart. Your liver's going to make it. And then you end up with a toxic liver. I mean, your liver's not invincible. And what's interesting is women with the highest cholesterol rates or levels live the longest. That Japanese lipid profile study.
And low cholesterol levels are related to higher cancer risks.
Yes.
And so it is really very, very interesting. These
and
stories.
Depression. I mean, especially women suffering from PCOS, thyroid disorders, anything like that. If you get your cholesterol checked, it's most likely going to be elevated. You know why? Because cholesterol makes healthy hormones. Okay, so it's trying to make progesterone and estrogen. So like women that are, going through menopause or perimenopause, their cholesterol goes through the roof. And their doctor's like, we need to put you on a statin, right? And then all of those bad things happen. And in reality, their ovaries, are no longer spitting estrogen and progesterone out. And, the cholesterol is trying to get that to happen, and it's not going to. But it's going to be elevated.
So we're starving the hormone producing organs in our body, and we're causing so much inflammation. And in the story of fruits, fiber, vegetables, and lean meat is so ingrained to our brains, it's really hard. And there's a lot of negative opinions about keto diets, right? Where do people find? I mean, I know where I find it from Maria, and in her new keto book, which is amazing because it really has a ton of science and really great stuff. If you want to learn more,
it's on audiobook now too.
And I do tons of audio.
Me too.
And actually, this is like home run because that's one of my first of Maria's keto stuff. That is keto adaptation. Really, it is key. But tell me a little bit about what it means to be keto adapted.
So right away when you start keto, you're going to reap some benefits. But there's carbohydrates retain water. So when you first eliminate those carbohydrates, along goes a lot of water loss, right? And with that water loss goes your electrolytes. You may have heavy legs walking upstairs. You may cry easier. You might be more moody. But guess what? That's the part of getting into ketosis, but you want to be smart about it. You need to make sure that you get enough salt. If you think about when you're eliminating breads and pastas and rice, and even like a McDonald's small milkshake has more salt in it than their French fry does.
Wow.
So we're eliminating a lot of this salt, okay? And when you are making your own food at home, we've been told to stay away from salt. And so we don't salt our food, so it tastes bland, and everybody goes back to the restaurant because they're not happy with their food. They don't think it tastes good. So adding in enough salt will help you bring back those electrolytes and the hydration. Too oftentimes we're way dehydrated. That's why people lose like 5-10 pounds in the beginning. I worked with a woman who was 500 pounds, and she would fluctuate 20 pounds a day, depending if she followed me and listened to what I told her, and then she'd fall off the wagon, and she said 20 pounds she'd fluctuate, But getting truly keto adapted, back to your question, it's a process. It's not going to happen in 1 week. Don't think, okay, I'm going to run a marathon next month and I'm going to start keto today, because you're not going to be truly fat adapted. And even after a year of eating strictly keto, you will still see benefits. What's going on is your mitochondria, that's the powerhouse part of your cells, that's where your energy comes from. That's where we oxidize fat. Become much healthier, right? Our mitochondria is about 99% water. And you can influence that mitochondria in a lot of ways. And that brings me back. I have a chili pad at home. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's a chili pad that I lay on at nighttime. It's almost like this cooling pad. And so the act of cooling your body down helps make that mitochondria much more efficient. Everybody talks about taking hot showers and things like that. This is why I like swimming in Dr. Kiltz's lake, because it's ice cold. It's a glacier lake.
So the cooling down.
Yes.
This is really Tell me more about the cooling down, because you're right. Everyone's exercising, and heating up, and we get in saunas and hot tubs, and that's how important that is. But because I know you've been talking a lot more about cool therapy.
I've been doing cold therapy for a really long time. I even have a bathtub outside, only cold water, ice. And what that does is, it shrinks. So like when you're making ice and stuff, like you're making that mitochondria much more efficient. They can talk better when it's cold, and when it's hot, and even if you just benefit from getting your hands cool and your feet cold and your face. That's why animals, they have fur on the other parts of their body, but they can cool themselves down with their pads.
So our bodies are actually very good at heating us up.
Yeah.
But it's not so good at cooling us down, because it has to work much harder. And the one thing I've looked at is that DNA and protein and all sorts of other molecules in our body are actually denatured and damaged from heat. You're just cooking the body.
Yeah, I work with a lot of people with diverticulitis, colitis, Crohn's, and they said they did great on keto, but adding that cold therapy helped those micro muscles that you can't do bicep curls for your intestines, right? I mean, it's just not possible. But that helped them heal more than they believe the food did. I'm sure the food got rid of the inflammation, but the cold therapy took it another step.
Well, the interesting part about the for so many on a very high plant-based diet, there's a lot of fermentation going on in the GI tract. That fermentation is exothermic, so it's creating heat, which actually is a large part of the disease process. So the keto and cooling really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you think about people with Crohn's or colitis, diverticulitis, the doctor always says get rid of the fiber, right? But they say go to the white foods like white bread and white rice, but they're disconnecting that all of that fiber is fermenting, right? And causing issues with the gut. Why not cut it out before the issues happen?
Well, it's very confusing. Is it a high fiber diet, a low fiber diet? You're getting a lot of fiber here. I mean, it's so confusing out there.
You don't need fiber to go number 2. Just think about newborn babies. They go poo all the time.
And it's breast milk, and that's it. Let me get to a couple of questions,
because
I know we're gonna keep on. We could talk for hours. I know that, but Katie Gradage asked a question about thoughts on exogenous ketones for an extra anti-inflammatory boost. Maria.
They're very expensive, and don't chase higher ketone numbers. Higher ketones do not mean higher results whatsoever. You can do a lot. It's hard because there's so many of those keto products out there. I gained weight on them. I tried them a couple years ago. And it's all about oxidative priority. If you want me to get into that?
Yeah, please. Let's talk about what is it?
Oxidative priority.
Oxidative priority. Okay, I'm gonna have to look. I know a little bit about it, but not as much as you.
It's the rate of which your body uses different fuels for energy or whatever. So the first thing that your body is going to burn is alcohol, because it's toxic and there's no storage sites. Okay, so let's get rid of that, right? The second one is exogenous ketones. It's because there's no storage site and you don't really need it. Higher ketones do not mean really anything. Mine are actually really low, but that's because I work out in a fasted state. And so I'm using them for energy. There's less in my bloodstream. Not a bad thing. I'm still in ketosis. The third thing is protein. The key is you want to hit your protein goal to build muscle mass. Okay? It's not a lot. It's about 0.8 times your lean mass.
So a lot less protein that we're told to eat, I think. So.
I would say that most women aren't getting enough.
Okay.
And that's why they often come to me and say, Maria, I'm losing my hair on a keto diet. So this isn't a lot. I mean, it would be on average like 80 grams. It's not a lot, but most women are doing fat bombs or fat fasts when they're doing keto, and then they're like, I'm losing my hair, all of that.
Losing my mind.
I mean, you have to think about this. You can't build muscle on fat. It's physics, right?
100%.
Okay, So what's great about keto is you use less branched chain amino acids when you work out. So your need is less for the branched chain amino acids. However, you do need to hit a certain protein goal, but it's about 0.8 times your lean mass. It's not, everybody overestimates their lean mass. I'll just put it that way. You know, someone who's 200 pounds doesn't want to admit that they're 50% body fat. You know, it's hard. So the next one is carbohydrates. It's going to burn that. The nice thing about protein is you get a thermic defective food, which kind of revs your metabolism, and you know it feeds that thyroid. All those amino acids are, you know, L-tyrosine for your thyroid. All of these things. But then the last one is fat. So fat still will raise insulin. That's something that nobody wants to admit, but it does. And so even on a fat fast or fat bomb type of a day, you're not truly fasting. Okay, that's a mistake that a lot of people don't understand. And then you utilize body fat. So if most people are coming to me because they want to, you know, lose weight, right? 99%.
That is the primary purpose of so many people out there. But in this environment, we want to reduce your inflammation to help you conceive either naturally or with assistance.
Right, and in that case, I really like to leave people with cholesterol makes healthy hormones. So don't be afraid of the cholesterol and saturated fat, because think about our ancestors way back when. If a couple, they married, they were in a hut, they got to eat the best parts of the animal first. Nobody ate until because that was their future. They needed to have babies come from that couple, and so they ate the cholesterol, all of that, before anybody else.
So maybe we'll talk a little bit about intermittent feasting, intermittent fasting. And I talk a lot about intermittent feasting because I believe this term intermittent fasting is actually just incorrect terminology, but maybe you can help us understand about fasting and where to put it in all this keto stuff.
It's such a, for me, it was, in college I was taught you need to eat every 2 hours, otherwise you're going to, you know, go into starvation mode and all of that. Now we have the education to know that when your body's processing food all the time, it can't heal other parts of your cells. And so this is just shortening that window to not eat all the time. The Onion, are you familiar with that? It's a kind of a satire newspaper, and they said Americans now eat one constant meal a day. You know, we're just never stop.
We're grazing animals.
We're grazing animals, and what happens then is most of us have some sort of damage going on, and it just can't heal those cells because it's always focusing on digesting food, you know, and that's what's going on. So intermittent fasting, it can be in a variety of different ways. If it's really hard for you to wrap your mind around, maybe just shorten that window a little bit. Don't think you need to wake up and eat right away in the morning. If you're not hungry, wait until you're hungry, you know? And don't eat up right before bed, because you can manipulate your hormones a lot with the timing of when you eat. And, you know, with like human growth hormone and all of those, you can really manipulate those with your, not only what you're eating, but when you're eating them. And so, you know, just shortening that window so you're not eating right away when you wake up. Maybe it's a 8-hour window at first, and then you short, like Gandhi, not Gandhi, it was Buddha. Everybody thinks of Buddha as this big, you know, large statue, you know, kind of a roly-poly guy. He's actually very lean, and he lived a very affluent life where he had lots of things and stuff, and he wanted to find enlightenment. So he gave away everything, every penny, and he fasted for so many days he almost died. He did not find enlightenment there. You know where he found it? In the middle. He shortened his eating, and, you know, he lived like a moderate life, but he did intermittent fasting. All of our greats did. They all did.
Well, that's it. So the foundation of a spiritual discussion in life is about fasting and going without and realizing that we need a lot less than we think we do.
Yeah, I heard this amazing quote that we are most human when we are not eating.
Yes, because when we usually eat, what do we do?
You know, yeah.
Table quiet.
Yeah.
But we're putting our phones and our other devices too much around us and all those things. And obviously we're glad you're focusing on this device today, but it really is, you sometimes have to put these things away and have more time for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and pay attention. And I think that's another important one. So tell me about the paying attention to the food and also honoring the food.
Right. And if you're grazing all day, you never get that delicious flavor of food when you're really hungry, because it tastes so much better. But not just that, like really be present with your food. I tell people never, ever eat for a work meeting because it's stressful. And if you're eating in a stressful environment, your body's not processing that food like it should. And so if you're looking at Facebook, and to tell you the truth, like sometimes that stresses me out. I mean, that's work for me, right? And, all of that type of stuff, that social media or TV or whatever it is, really focus on the food, enjoy every single bite, and then move on to the rest of your life.
So when we're stressed, cortisol and epinephrine go up, and that actually distributes the blood flow away from the core and out to the periphery, and even it diminishes in the brain. So when we're watching TV, video, or listening to something that actually is distracting, it's not good for us.
No.
Obviously, we're mostly in a safer place to sit and eat and relax, and we should spend more time doing that. Although we use a lot of our meals as social, cultural gathering.
So I worked with a psychologist that I asked, because of this whole intermittent fasting thing, I work with a lot of families, and they say, well, I feel like I should eat dinner with my kids because that's what they say, a family that eats together, stay together. I was corrected, which I'm glad. It's about spending quality time together. So you don't have to actually eat. Like you said, you're not talking when you're eating, but if you make meals together, if you go on a bike ride together, if you go for a walk together, do something that you actually enjoy together. And then if you are intermittent fasting and you're not eating dinner with your kids, don't feel guilty about that. Make sure that you find another time to be together.
So, and the one beauty about your cookbooks is really it's art.
Oh, thank you.
And that's the beauty of it, and that's why I think food is part of our culture, social entertainment.
Yes.
But the act, we always got to be careful about making food just entertainment, because it really is sustenance and healing. But at the same time, that meal can be enjoyment for kids and family and partners and friends. And
I mean, if you think about, Christmas, Valentine's Day, birthdays, like they all stem around food. And so that's not a bad thing, but making it your life is, so you need to find that balance. I mean, a lot of people are like, your Instagram doesn't have enough food pictures or whatever. It's like, because I'm out there living life. I'm out there with the whales. I'm out there, like, I'm on my bike. I'm not, that stuff's way more entertaining than a picture of my food, right?
So we're just getting back to Georgia. Daniel, hi everyone, by the way, and a shout out always, but had a question about how many months in keto diet to help with natural fertility.
Well, it depends on what the issue is, and you have to realize it wasn't an overnight process to have these damaged hormones, and so it's not going to be an overnight process to fix them. But if you are on it and don't do these high carb days or these cheat days, it will take a couple months. I mean, it'll take maybe a year. It might take a little bit longer, but it really depends on how damaged your cells were. Like if you're constantly if you're going from a diet of eating all of these trans fats, and trans fats are, Twinkies, fake foods.
Fats.
Yeah, even peanut butter,
fake fats.
Jif peanut butter and all of that type of stuff. It forms a crust around your cells. And so your cells are no longer talking. They look like plastic because you were eating all this plastic. It's not going to be a couple months to change that.
So in some cases, we've seen some improvement in 2 to 4 weeks.
Yes, no doubt.
because a lot of it is actually shifting and getting rid of the poisons that are flowing through our GI tract. I call it the bowel bucket, the bad.
Yep.
And so it could be a short amount of time as that to help with things like IUI and IVF. But natural fertility, you know, it's a frustrating part because if it doesn't happen right away, people then get depressed. And what do you want to do when you're depressed? You want to eat because that makes you happy. And what do you want to eat when you're sad? You want to eat carbs. And so the trick is to keep on this, keep listening to Maria, watching her stuff. See My Fertility, we have Dr. K's Keto. So we're all working to be a village and join together to listen. I know we were talking about Anders Enfeldt, the diet doctor, and really there's so many resources out there that you need to listen, watch. I watched a lot of videos. I used to just watch Maria's stuff, and we get inspired by this stuff.
But I would say too, like with the whole fertility thing, you know, I'm a busybody. I like to ride my bike. I like to run. But I'm usually running in the woods, like sometimes barefoot. Like it's not a very, like I'm not running marathons or anything like that. But if fertility is your goal, that is not the time.
Slow it down.
Do some yoga. That's like it, because, you know, if you think about, like, if your body is expending all of this energy on that type of stuff, it kind of tells your ovaries, like, ooh, this is not a time to have a baby, because she's maybe in a famine, maybe not eating enough calories, or, you know, something like that. So don't worry about weight loss at this point. You need to focus on the right things.
Well, and I believe that the human body is meant to get fat in order to store the energy in order to go through the famine, the war, the pestilence, or even go through pregnancy.
Yes.
So we're driving ourselves to be thin, and we getting fatter. So by simply changing the approach and going into a ketogenic dietary plan, Maria's keto, you'll really find suddenly you just feel better, and there's no having to work to lose weight.
No.
You'll actually...
I work out way less than I did before. I was running marathons and gaining weight. Like, it was just, the whole cortisol you talked about, whoa, that was through the roof, right? But I was going to say, shoot, I forgot.
It'll come to us.
It will come to us.
Okay, so... William Boatwright, how are you guys doing? And Michelle, how much water do you suggest daily?
What are your opinion on it?
Well, I think we're given the advice to drink way too much water. You can go about 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks to 3 months without food. So
I used to teach a survival class.
And I'd say just drink when you're thirsty. But this forcing liters down your gullet, I believe, dilutes your digestion.
Don't ever drink while you're eating.
Yeah, it's not the time, and so it's amazing how most animals, you know, they eventually will get to the water hole, but it's not like they're dragging their carcass to the water hole or eating
dipping
and drinking
it in the water
at
or
the
something.
same time. So the idea, I believe that we are given one is 3 to 5 meals a day is bad. And drinking liters of gallons of water is also not good. So sip and drink a little from time to time. You'll notice when you feel thirsty, you'll drink.
Yeah, and you know, if you have migraines, headaches, that type of stuff, it's probably dehydration. But anyway.
You'll notice it. Okay, Becky Goldich, are you okay if I'm making keto ice cream with erythritol or putting cheese on eggs?
It depends on what your goals are. We do know that dairy is one of the most common allergens that can cause a lot of miscarriages and things like that. So if you are having miscarriages, or you know you have a dairy issue, getting rid of all dairy, that's, you know, butter and ghee and all of that. If you're really desperate, you'll do it. Be a carnivore, right? The true carnivore diet is not filled with dairy.
Kiltz is keto, bacon, eggs, butter, beef. That's mine. And it's called Baby, B-E-B-B.
Oh, funny.
And so all AKA the Lioness or the Lion King plan, it just it really narrows it. And I believe the narrowing and getting rid of the variety is the trick and the key. Because you can't have boyfriends or girlfriends on the side of a husband or wife. Deadly. We all know that. So it's really kind of interesting advice. Now, sugar substitutes, do you have any recommendations or uses in your. It's
okay.
We're just sharing ideas.
Yeah. Yes, you could do that. I will tell you that erythritol is going to make that ice cream harden like a rock.
It's always best if it's fresh, though.
Yeah.
So if you make it you eat it, it's soft. But once you put it in that freezer,
it's going to harden. You could get these little put it in individual portions in like maybe a silicone cup or something like that, and then freeze it, and then you just have little portions because most people overeat keto treats.
Keto treats are, sort of, this is where I thought Atkins was really great. Weight loss was fantastic, always beat all the other diets. But once you lost the weight, they then began to say, here's a little bit of carbocaine to have back again.
He would be rolling over in his grave because he would never recommend those Atkins bars. They're anything but low carb. They have as many carbohydrates as a Kit Kat bar, but it says only 3 net carbohydrates. You need to count total, people. Total.
Net is making us a little negative
cuckoo
here, but it is cuckoo because a carb is a carb is a carb, and I think the fiber part of the carbs, they're gonna be broken down by the bacteria and yeast and ferment.
Yep.
It's really bad.
I work with a lot of type 1 diabetics, and they're monitoring all the time. They had a Quest bar, spike. They were following Quest bar, spike. Oh, you know what else? Yogurt, big spike.
So Daniela McKenna, we're talking a lot about keto here, and not as much about fertility keto, but that's where the CMI Fertility Facebook Live talks a lot there. But basically, keto is for all diseases, and infertility or miscarriages is just another one of the labels of diseases: hypertension, diabetes, irritable bowel colitis. So in fact, fertility keto is the same as every other keto. Yeah. It's going to reduce the inflammation in the core, peripherally, everywhere, and it's going to improve. So really, Maria's keto is not specific to fertility because there isn't one specific to fertility, in my opinion.
Right. But I will say, majority of people that I work with want to lose weight, and I, tell them to do this. However, I'm working with a female right now, and she wishes, she wants to lose weight, but she also wants to get pregnant. I was like, so that's going to happen later. The weight loss will happen later. Right now we're focusing on getting pregnant. And right at that moment, adding in more cholesterol and stuff to make those hormones is very important. Do not focus on a scale right now.
Well, it's so we know that gastric bypass surgery, which I don't recommend, it's highly dangerous, helps women lose weight. And in many of those, it actually increases their fertility, and a lot of that has to do with because when you go on a low calorie diet, you'll have many of the same benefits and changes, but I don't think it gets to the core as much because it doesn't reduce the inflammation as much.
Right. No, and they usually, they can't absorb certain nutrients like iron and B12, and so they're usually low in that. That's why they're often told to supplement with those types of things. And I work with so many people who went through gastric bypass, and they said they wish they would have found me instead.
So do you know much about CBD oil? We've been talking a lot about CBD oil and low-dose naltrexone. Obviously we're here talking about the food plan and using.
No, but I am very familiar with CBD oil. My husband, hi Craig, if you're watching.
Hi Craig, how you doing?
Dealing with a lot of chronic pain with Lyme, we tried CBD oil and it didn't work. Some people are like, well, you need a good quality one, and we've tried very good quality ones multiple times, and it didn't work in his case. So
the problem maybe is deeper or different than we even understand in some cases.
He's been dealing with, his is so extreme. But if you're dealing with pain, anxiety, sleep issues, I think CBD oil is great for a lot of things. It depends on how deep you are into your illness to know if it's going to help.
So I'm reading some of the questions. That's why I'm looking down
what
here, by the way.
Dairy?
Dairy. And I'm reading a book about dairy and milk recently.
Yeah.
Straggler, I can't remember the name, but it's really very, very, very interesting. And that actually being lactose intolerant is our normal.
Yeah.
Being able to drink milk. And so my bet is, for many people that seem to tolerate milk, they actually may not, and they just don't know it because it doesn't affect them with outward symptoms as much. It's deep within.
Yeah, inflammation can happen anywhere. It doesn't always happen in the gut. It can happen in the brain. It can cause depression. Food allergies can happen in different areas of your body, not just right here. And if you think about an 8-ounce glass of skim milk has more sugar than a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Wow.
But nobody wants to say,
But it makes us happy.
I know,
we get a white
right?
mustache and...
Yeah, and it's not all about the whole calcium thing, building healthy bones. It's about getting calcium into the bones, and it's more of a 4-to-1 ratio, magnesium to calcium. And especially women dealing with PCOS, perimenopause, menopause, you need that progesterone for bone health. But also, if you look at the sheath of our bones, they're made up of saturated fat. Not just any fat, saturated fat. So if you're a vegan, think again. My great-grandma Cress, when she was 92, I've told this story, my keto-adapted people know this. When she was 92, she opened up the door. This was at a Christmas get-together. She thought it was a bathroom, but it was a door to the basement. She fell all the way down the steps onto a concrete floor. That woman didn't break one bone. But you know what? You open up a refrigerator, she has coffee cups filled with lard. I would always want to clean her fridge and be like, what is this gross stuff?
Well, I've been cooking with lard and tallow, and you can actually find some great stuff on YouTube and videos on how to render your own.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
But getting back to dairy, there's so many other fats like lard and tallow, buffalo tallow, there's duck fat, all of those you could use instead of butter.
I've been using duck fat, and I love foie gras, and it's pretty amazing, but liver. So what about for those people who have lost their gallbladders?
Oh.
Because, so a high-carb, plant-based diet, you lose your gallbladder, you lose your appendix, and...
If you think about your gallbladder is a muscle, and just like you work your bicep, to make it stronger, if you're not eating any fat, that gallbladder is going to atrophy. And the whole gluten connection and allergies and gallbladder, it's, it goes hand in hand. But when you're eating keto, you're using more of medium chain triglycerides rather than long chain, getting rid of all of those bad vegetable oils and canola oil, soybean oil. The medium chain triglycerides your body can process. It doesn't need bile salts for digestion then.
Well, it's interesting because the bile is still being produced.
Yeah. Otherwise you die. You just die.
And so it's just not being stored for the same way. Right. And my bet is still, if you're having some fat, you're going to digest it in your GI tract.
I do usually recommend different enzymes and that type of stuff.
So Ananda Masbase, how you doing, Ananda and Imani? Should we be eating lunch or dinner as our meal of the day?
Whatever works for you. I mean, whatever works for you. Like if you are really busy in the evening and you want to enjoy that food, right? Instead of eating in your car. I had the great opportunity to go to Italy this last year, or a couple months ago, and everybody stops, pulls over. They don't drink in the car. They don't drink coffee in the car. They don't eat in the car.
Damn. Oh.
They stop and they have their espresso at these, gas stations that are like coffee shops, and then they'll get back in the car and go. They don't drink anything in the car. They don't eat in the car. So if you're really busy at night with different kids' activities, especially this time of year with school starting again, that doesn't work for me. I need to eat earlier in the day. So whatever works for you, that's what you need to focus on.
And hi to Bonnie too, by the way. All right. And I tend to do my meal at night.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that waiting and enjoying that meal.
I get that.
Me, but I think there are many, it's the two meals, whether breakfast, dinner, lunch, dinner.
Yeah.
But there are some that it's okay to eat the 3 meals. But if you really have to focus on the keto plan.
Right. For me, food is very energizing. So if I eat close to bed, I'm like, I feel like I could run forever. Like I'm just the Energizer Bunny.
Keep going.
Right? So that's why, because I've tried that. I am open to any suggestions, so I did your way, but I was really hyped up. And to this day, if we go to like a family gathering or something and we eat closer to bedtime, I am just like, wow, can't sleep.
I am always hyped up. So that's just what it is.
You want some of this energy, right?
Non-stop. Christina Chadwick, how you doing? What about those people who say that they cannot do keto because they have children?
Oh, I do. Mine are 9 and 7.
And so what we really all need to learn to do is realize that the kids are getting a tremendous amount of disease because they're eating this standard American diet.
I am seeing so many kids with fatty liver disease. They are not drinking alcohol. They're drinking Gatorade, sodas, juices, Go-Gurts, like all of these things.
Go-Gurts.
It's like yogurt with
on the go.
You know, like high fructose corn syrup in it. But all of these foods marketed to our kids, they're making them ill, and I worry about our future. I really, really do. Because they're filled with all of these illnesses, but we think, oh, they're skinny. Can you be skinny and a diabetic? Heck yeah, you can.
Well, lots. And PCOS, 50% are thin.
Yes.
And so it's really...
It's not about how many fat cells you have. It's how stuffed they are.
It is also what's flowing through the body. Mm-hmm. And the gut is holding all this poison, and it's just being slowly released in our body.
I would have no other way. My kids, I don't count their carbohydrates, but knowing what we eat, like I'm not a short order cook. They eat what's in my books, and they love it. And it takes time and energy to make it, but I got to tell you, my little boy said, "Oh, Mommy, this is the best protein noodle lasagna I've ever had in my life." I still think about that, and that happened months ago. And no, I didn't have the time to do it, but when I do make it, I'm going to make about 4 pans. I throw a couple in the freezer, and then all I have to do is put it in a delay timer. I love my delay timer. And I'm feeding my family well. It's totally worth the effort. But, my kids probably get no more than 10, 20 total carbs a day, but they like less. Like they would rather have a true, like a beef stick rather than, a cupcake any day, a keto cupcake. But they really enjoy the food. Their palates are different because my son Kai, he came into my life when he was only 1, and so I started him off on bone broth, and he had bone marrow, which is kind of like Jell-O for babies. It's a perfect food that's like creamy and jello-y, like, for a baby to get down. So his palate, he doesn't have a sweet tooth whatsoever because you're in charge.
So if it's not good for us, why do we feed it to our children? And we know that alcohol is not good for us, and we really need to really cut back on the snacks and all those. And
that's what's really freeing. If you have kids that do start keto, my kids eat 3 meals a day, and they sit down and eat the food, and they like the food. But if you're always knowing that there's a snack like an hour later, you're not going to eat the pork chop put in front of you.
And what about seeds and nuts? Where do you fall in on seeds and nuts? Because I always think seeds and nuts there's some allergic components, and there's also some phytochemicals that may be a factor. But tell me what your opinion is.
Well, especially like flax seeds, chia seeds are very estrogenic, and I'm talking about that bad toxic estrogen that we have, like the belly fat, that alcohol increases too, right? So I never recommend those. If you see recipes made with those online, go away from them, like just stay away. Most of my books are completely nut-free. No almond flour, anything like that, because there's so many other delicious foods. Like most cookbooks only have 100 recipes. They're like stock filled with 200. And I didn't even have to go to those nut flours. There's so much good food. If you're having gut issues, get them out. Just because, especially like the diverticulitis, all that fermentation, just you don't need it. And you could make like a flourless chocolate cake without any nut flours, nuts, seeds, anything like that.
I'm seeing a number of questions, Ashley, Katie, Gradage, about diabetes and how is keto for diabetes?
Well, it's fantastic. It's like, it's the best. What's happening is, when you're eating all of those carbohydrates, People don't realize, you put a cracker in your mouth. It doesn't taste sweet, and but it's raising your blood sugar just like sugar does. And so getting rid of those carbohydrates, instead of your blood sugar what goes up must come down. And so when you eat keto, it stays nice and even. You don't get the highs, so you don't get the lows. So it stays nice and even. People they get off metformin, all their diabetes medication within a matter of weeks.
So Christy Lewis brought up the point about her husband and having issues with low glucose. And I think really the issue is because the diabetics are on insulin and they're on other oral hypoglycemic agents, and so you actually have to eat a carb in order to prevent yourself from going hypoglycemic. Now,
if even working with type 1 diabetics that eat keto, you can eat enough protein to boost that up.
Right. But so it's still about that. The challenge is for those people that are taking.
They need, because a doctor is just going to give you more medicine to cover up the problem.
And so one of the problems in this whole scenario about diabetics is that the real diabetic problem is mostly because since we feed you and recommend a high carbohydrate diet, of course you're going to need the insulin. Right. Now, if we put you on a lower carb diet, you're not going to need the insulin. So you're going to. The
doctor's just trying to cover up the problem.
That's it.
Instead of fix it, like putting a Band-Aid on that issue. Let's just fix it rather than take more medication. What's really scary is, with those blood sugar ups and downs, your A1C is going to go through the roof. And if you want to talk about heart disease, stroke, look at your A1C and your calcium score number. That's what's caught. If that A1C is high, that's inflammation right there.
And so if you have a problem, you have inflammation.
Yeah.
And we all have it we have to have some inflammation in our bodies because that's how our body keeps us alive. Let's see, Qigong and cupping for the acupuncturist. It is good, I think, and good question, Becky. And we'll get Donald in on one of these, our acupuncturist, Donald Clark. He's awesome.
Avery asked, will eating a calorie deficit on keto affect my metabolism? I'm hardly hungry on keto. That is so funny. So I'm very sensitive, and my husband's like, oh, you got the best bad review on Amazon. And I was like, oh, I don't want to know. And he's like, no, it's great. It says, I hate keto. I'm always full. And it's like, hello? That's what I love about it, because I can go out on an adventure and not think about food. I used to be hangry all the time, but I just want to address her question. If you hit your protein goal and you keep carbohydrates close to zero, and you use your fat for ketosis, you will be in ketosis and you won't harm your metabolism. Starvation mode happens when you're eating carbohydrates.
So I've always found that fat is our fuel always. Carbs and amino acids basically cause damage to our bodies, and the liver needs to turn it over and convert it to fat. And the beauty of going on Maria's keto is that you're really getting a lot more fat, reducing inflammation, because we even give intravenous fat to reduce inflammation and help people get and stay pregnant, intralipids.
Yeah.
So it's really pretty amazing. And so these fat bombs and some of these things are really, really helpful in doing that. But basically, I know for myself, I'm not hungry very much anymore because we've changed our habit. Because remember, as an addiction to carbohydrates, which we are addicted, and we're meant to be, because if that fruit tree is out in the wilderness, and if you don't eat it, you're not going to get fruit for the next week, 2 or 3. That's why we're addicted to it. So this keto adaptation, once you get there, it's just like the most amazing thing.
It is. It's like a natural drug.
It is. It is a natural drug. And let's see. Well, how are we doing time-wise, Will?
2 minutes technically.
All right.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna close it up, and because we're gonna go and do another conference with Maria and answer some questions. And she's going to share her story even some more. So let's see. Oh, cheese, because
cheese is dairy.
Right. So you got to be careful about a lot of the cheeses.
Right. It just depends on. Some people can do cheeses and some people can't. I would say it's like 50-50. It is one of the more common allergens, and that's why I wrote 2 dairy-free books, because it was that important. But there's so many other delicious foods that you don't even miss it.
So you'll find this on the recordings and with, let's see, keto adaptation.
Yep, keto. What is it? I don't even know.
Well, and CMI Fertility. And we're going to have it on CMI Healing Arts and just more on your health and wellness. It's really a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, Maria.
Thank you.
God bless.
This is awesome.
Look forward to more of your great books and inspiration.
Thank you.